So we're about to dive into a social media strategy that honestly challenges pretty much everything you think you know about posting. And the wildest part? It's all backed by some fascinating data that suggests we've been laser focused on the wrong thing this whole time.
You know the feeling, right? You spend all this time crafting what you think is the perfect post. You hit publish and then nothing. Crickets. It's a frustration every single creator and brand has felt. You're putting in all this work, but you're just not seeing the results.
And that's the thing, you're doing everything you're supposed to do. You're making high-quality stuff, it's valuable, it's well thought out, but the likes, the shares, the growth, it all just feels like it's hit a wall. But here's the good news, the answer might not be to work harder, but to start working smarter. And luckily, the data tells us exactly how.
Okay, so let's start with the most fundamental question of all. What should you actually be posting? Let's forget what the gurus say for a minute. We're going to go straight to the numbers from a huge 2024 Instagram study by Metricool.
So right off the bat, one thing is overwhelmingly clear. Just look at the dominance of one format. Brands are posting stories almost 72% of the time, and it makes sense, right? They're quick, they're pretty easy, and they give you that sense of urgency. But the real question is, does all that effort actually pay off in engagement?
Well, here's where it gets interesting. This is the big disconnect. While brands are pouring all this energy into stories, the data clearly shows that carousels get the highest engagement. Meanwhile, Reels are the undisputed champs for reaching new people. So the takeaway here is really simple. Stop trying to use a hammer for every nail. You gotta match the format to your goal. If you want engagement, use carousels. If you want reach, use Reels.
Okay, so now you have a better idea of what to post. But that leads to the next big question, the one that causes so much burnout for social media managers. How often do you really need to be posting?
For years, we've all had this idea hammered into our heads. Post daily. But the truth is, the algorithms have gotten way smarter. They don't just reward you for showing up, they reward relevance. They're looking for signs that people actually care about your content. You know, the saves, the comments, the shares. One truly great post will always beat 7 mediocre ones.
I absolutely love this quote because it's just so true. Trying to constantly feed the machine every single day, that's not a strategy. It's just a fast track to burning out yourself and your entire team. It forces you to prioritize quantity. And when that happens, quality almost always takes a nosedive.
So what do you do instead? It's all about finding a sustainable rhythm. Instead of chasing some arbitrary daily quota, you need to dive into your analytics and find a cadence that you can actually maintain. You can create these strategic buckets of content. Some of it is evergreen, some of it is timely, and just focus on being consistent. Because at the end of the day, consistency will always be frequency. All right, let's move on to the next piece of this puzzle because it all builds on each other. You've got the right content format, you've got a sustainable frequency, but if you post it when your entire audience is asleep, well, it was all for nothing. Let's talk about timing.
And this isn't guesswork, it's actually a super simple, data-driven process. First, just go into your insights. Where in the world is your audience? Second, figure out when those people are most active online. And finally, just schedule your posts to hit that sweet spot. It's such a simple shift, but it can totally transform your visibility.
And this is why it's so crucial. Just look at the difference here. The peak time in North America is completely different from the peak time in Europe. And Southeast Asia, they're on a whole other schedule. If you've got a global audience and you're only posting on a single time zone, you are actively ignoring huge chunks of your followers.
So, we've covered what to post, how often to post, and when to post. But what if I told you one of those is way more important than the others? What if we've been putting all our energy in the wrong place this whole time? I mean, it's the ultimate marketing mantra, isn't it? Content is king. We've all heard it a million times. But a really fascinating 2024 academic study actually challenges this core belief. It asks a pretty radical question. Is the content really the thing that drives popularity?
Now, to answer this, researchers did this massive analysis of over 4,400 TED Talks. And I know this chart looks complex, but the idea behind it is actually super simple. They used AI to figure out what topics the speakers were choosing to talk about. Then they compared that to the view counts to see what audiences were actually choosing to watch. The whole goal was to find the gap between what's being created and what's really in demand.
And these charts, wow, they really reveal the results. So the graph on the left shows the topics that speakers supplied the most, things like emotions and politics. But the graph on the right, which shows what got the most views, tells a totally different story. The audience demand was for stuff like the brain and the universe. And while, yeah, there was some overlap, the study found this clear, persistent mismatch between what creators were making and what audiences actually wanted to see.
And this is what led to the study's absolutely stunning conclusion. For the audience, it turns out that timing factors, things like what's trending right now, what's new, what's relevant in this exact cultural moment, had a more powerful influence on popularity than the actual content topic itself. Let me say that again. When something was released mattered more than what it was about.
And so that leaves us with this final, really provocative question. As creators, as marketers, we spend so much of our time and energy managing our content. But maybe the real strategic advantage comes from managing our timing. Are you just feeding the content machine, or are you delivering the right message at the exact right